Hey, Mount Hood region. We are here for a short little chat with a good friend of mine, Nat Brown. He's going to share some perspective with us about being on Young Life staff. Nat, why don't you share your Young Life story with us and kind of how you got onto Young Life staff?
Yeah, I grew up with like a divorced family. My dad split when I was pretty young. My stepdad was a Christian and kind of introduced Jesus to our family. While growing up, I just had pretty good life. Really fortunate, really privileged. Spent most of my time skateboarding. That's all I really cared about. By the time I got to middle school and into early high school, I just felt this incredible void. I felt super lonely. I felt super unlovable. By the time I got into high school, I was just searching for meaning, just searching for a purpose.
So, Nat, let me ask you this. Why don't you share a few of the folks that were the biggest influences in your life?
A student leader named Drake Edwards, a youth pastor named Chris Nye, and a young life leader named Dan Watkins. My freshman year of high school, again, I was just living a wild life, and Drake would say, "Hey, you should come to Young Life." And I'd be like, "Nah, no thanks, that's not for me, that's a cult, I don't want anything to do with that." And he'd be like, No, you should come. And I was like, no. But he just kept pursuing me and my friends. He would take us out to lunch. He would go to the skate park with us. Drake was so different than anyone I had ever met. We'd have these conversations on the chairlift that I was just never, I could never have with any of my other friends.
Who first invited you to club?
A girl named Mackenzie Baker invited me to Young Life, and I was like, oh, a girl's inviting me? I can go to Young Life and say a few amens, some hallelujahs. And I showed up at my first Young Life club, and there she was like, oh, Nat, I'm so glad you came. And then she's like, have you met my boyfriend? Oof, that hurt. And so went through the rest of Young Life Club. There's the skits, the games, everything. But then I heard, I think it was you speak, and you talked about how there was a God that loved us. I have no clue what that means, but I want to hear more. Eventually, some friends invited me to a youth group here at Willamette, and then I met Chris Nye, who was the youth pastor, and I remember being super emotional after that youth group. And Chris came up to me and we were chatting on those stairs over there. He was like, you should come to Malibu Club with us. And I was like, nah, I'm good. Him and Drake just kept chasing after me. And eventually I got a call the night before, and they're like, hey, I know you're doing nothing this week. You should go to Malibu. And I was like, okay. And I did, and I went, and I had just the most incredible, it was just the best week of my life. I only remember two things, and it was my one-on-one with Chris and my 15 minutes of quiet with the Lord sitting out over the Malibu Inlet. And it was there that week where I accepted Jesus and came home and just tried to figure it out. And so my junior year of high school, I received a phone call from my friend Kai. And Kai said, hey, did you hear what happened to Drake? And I was like, no, what happened? And he's like, dude, he just passed away in a car accident. And that, for me, that just rocked my world. Here I was, a junior in high school, just sitting back and thinking, Lord, this is a guy that followed you, that loved you, that so many people just cared for, and he's gone. I was like, I have no clue what that means. I was hanging out with Chris, who was close to Drake, and he was saying, hey, do you remember back to your freshman year when Drake was reaching out to you and all your friends? I was like, yeah, I do. It was awesome. He goes, did you ever think about why? And I was like, oh, tell me more, why? And he goes, I remember talking to Drake his senior year, and he said he wanted to reach out to a group of kids that were just like him. And so Chris really encouraged me. He's like, I want you to look in your community, look in your high school, and say, who are the little Nats that are going through the same struggles, the same insecurities that you had? I want to start reaching out to a bunch of little Nats. and introduce them to Jesus.
I love that, man. If you were to fast forward a few years, you know, you were volunteering in Salem first, right?
Mm-hmm.
You volunteered for a couple of years. What was the piece for you where you went from, I want to be a volunteer, to I want to go on to staff?
I think for me, I had experienced so much joy leading kids. I just wanted other people to experience that same joy. There's no greater privilege than to step into a life of a teenager and introduce them to Jesus. I was like, okay, I like to lead kids, but I also want to be a leader of leaders, and to help facilitate them really make an impact in the lives of kids.
One thing that keeps a lot of folks considering Young Life staff, one of the biggest hesitations is raising money.
Yeah.
How did the Lord show up for you when you started raising money?
When I started out, I was not good at fundraising. It was so scary to ask people for money. And I think the thing that switched was, if I felt like asking people to support me through fundraising was a burden to ask them, then what I'm kind of communicating is that what I think I'm doing is a burden. And when I had that change, it was just a whole new world. And I was like, man, I just want everyone to be a part of this. When someone comes alongside you and supports you, it's an invitation into what you're doing. It's not just a simple transaction, here's a check, you know what I mean?
You've been in Westland for a month, 5 weeks. In that short time, how have you seen the Lord show up in your ministry here?
When we got here a month ago, I was like, I don't know any kids. We're in the middle of a pandemic. What the heck am I supposed to do? Like I said before in my story, skateboarding was a huge part. And I knew in this community that there's tons of kids at that skate park. And so I've just been able to show up there pretty much every day and just learn kids by name and just pray for them. And when I'm there, just getting to ask them. So I've just been able to meet tons of new kids in the middle of a pandemic. And that's just been super sweet. I think another way the Lord has showed up has just been through just gratitude. I think I've just been so thankful that I had somebody show up in my life. And it's such an honor to be doing the same for kids here today.
Well, hey, brother, thanks for taking some time today. Appreciate you. Appreciate what you're doing here. Thank you. And thanks, guys. Once again, thanks for joining us.